Hello, all you skibbies. This is Great Answer, and you may be coming to this because Tyomi said to you that she was on a podcast interview and you have no idea who I am or what I'm doing. That's fine. I am a person who's been podcasting since 2005. That's right, before iTunes did podcasts, I had a podcast. And most of the time that had to do with rope bondage. Recently, we started talking about all kinds of things with kink, sex, and culture. And that was in no small part because I wanted to be able to interview people like Tyomi, a.k.a. Goddess Tyomi, a.k.a. Glamazon Tyomi. She is someone who I got to be a guest on her podcast on Playboy. Playboy.com, or the Playboy Network, I guess was what it was. And she's just a vivacious and beautiful and knowledgeable and inspiring person and sex educator. I mean, she's the sex educator that I want to be when I grow up. So I was really excited to be able to do this interview with her that you're about to hear. Before I do that, though, of course, I have to talk about the fact that I'm able to bring you this podcast thanks to the generous donations of my sponsors. Now, some of them are people just like you who listen to this podcast, and they happen to have visited patreon.com, patreon.com/graydancer. GRAYDANCER. And they donate anywhere from $1 to $20, some of them. And that helps pay for my bandwidth costs and the editing programs and the extra processing time, because I do actually do some editing on this, believe it or not. Joke about not doing it, but and I really appreciate that. I try and give them back things like giving them occasional bits of erotica. They get access to my sketch notes that I take at different events that I get. And it just helps me make the podcast better. So I really appreciate that. And if you want to become one of them, I will appreciate you too. Not that I don't appreciate you already. I also appreciate you because you're going to let me tell you that you should go to twistedmonk.com. Now, Twisted Monk has a new color of the month for May. And honestly, I'm almost sorry to mention this because it's probably sold out already. His color of the month for May is one that I immediately said, oh my God, I want some. And it's Emerald City. It's a beautiful, beautiful shade of green with kind of a yellow brick road shade to it. And it just looks beautiful. And of course, I have a special spot in my heart, along with Naya, for all things related to Oz. So we really wanted it, but if it might be out of stock, it might not be. You should check. Go to twistedmonk.com and take a look at his other things. He also recently released a couple of new videos done with our good friend Sir Dart. With any luck, I'll be able to actually have some podcast interview with Sir Dart soon too. But you can learn a lot on twistedmonk.com, and also you can thank him for sponsoring this podcast. Now, another place that you can learn about rope bondage, and I'm actually very excited. I'm going to get to meet Tyomi in person on Monday of Memorial Day weekend. Monday is Memorial Day, actually. But Memorial Day weekend, we are doing Ropecraft Chicago, and the website is ropecraft.net. And if you are listening to this podcast before the 26th of May, 2017, you can still get tickets. You can get day passes, and a day pass is good for Saturday or Sunday. Either one gets you Monday also for free. Speaking of free, we're also going to give away free donuts and other breakfast pastries and fruit and things like that. Every day of the con, there is a catered meet and greet on Friday on the 26th. There's going to be performances. I'm doing a cabaret. There is a queer dungeon, a leather dungeon, a lot of different special interest groups like Kinksters of Color having a meetup and a luncheon. And then there's going to be the Cutthroat Dungeon, which is a kind of fun competition-y kind of thing that Shay does. Shay is a performer and teacher from San Francisco. Anyway, it's going to be great. We have 89 classes. It's revving up. It's coming at us. Just everything's falling into place. So I'm really excited. I hope to see you there. And remember, the website to go to is ropecraft.net. So without further ado, here is Goddess Tyomi talking with me about everything from teaching to sex to even celibacy and how fucking hot that can be. So welcome, all of you skebes. Tyomi, skebe is the Japanese term for pervert, usually considered a dirty old man, but I learned it from Midori, a rope bondage educator. Anyway, so it's really great to have Tyomi on my podcast. You know, this is Tit for Tat. I was on her podcast a while back, and of course, yours is an HBO podcast, so it's a little bit bigger reach than mine. But I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to talk to me early this morning.
Hey, anytime, man. Like, first of all, I love doing podcasts, and then I love the conversations that we have on Twitter. So it's nothing for me to get up this early and talk to you.
Oh man, Twitter, Instagram. I mean, you are a pleasure to follow, not just because of the cool ideas, but also, quite frankly, because of the really hot pictures that you post quite often. Yeah, it definitely, as a dear friend of mine says, that speaks to my interests. And I also got to have an unexpected encounter with you online because for this upcoming event, Ropecraft, we have one of our staff photographers is Solomon Abrams. And when I was looking at his page, there you were. You've worked with him before.
I have. And you know what? I'm looking forward to working with him again because, like, when I first worked with him, I was in the process of, like, losing weight and was feeling a little self-conscious about, like, my weight gain. And so I know, like, us working together a second time will be even better because I'll be completely uninhibited and free to just, express myself through bondage. But, like, Solomon is so cool. And, like, during the shoot, he made me popcorn. Like, he showed me, like a ghetto way, like a Jimmy Reed way of making, like, your own microwavable popcorn bags. And it was like a life hack that was genius. And ever since then, I'm like, yeah, we can shoot anytime. Okay,
I'm definitely going to try and pick his brain when I see him at Ropecraft for that, because that does sound like genius. Plus, giving the models popcorn, that's some sneaky comfort there. Nice job.
It is. I was so hungry, and I was like, you don't have any snacks? And he was like, I got popcorn. And I was like, okay, cool. So let's make it happen. And he just put 2 paper bags together, put some oil in, put the kernels in, sealed it up, and it popped just like, the microwavable bags you get from the store or whatever. And I was like, this changes things.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could describe you as a sex educator, but that just feels kind of inadequate. I mean, how do you define what kind of work you do?
So I am a sex educator and a sexuality coach. People like to call me a therapist or a doctor, which I completely appreciate because it is affirming for me since I am moving into holistic medicine. But I'm not a doctor yet. I don't have a psychology degree. So I'm simply a life coach that has a specialty within sexuality. And I also am a writer and a journalist. So I like to consider myself a sex positive broadcaster because I do a lot of my work online, broadcasting to the masses via YouTube, via Snapchat, via Twitter, via Tumblr, via Periscope. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do. And most people like to ask me, like, how did you get into all of this stuff? And really, like, this is kind of like a second or third career for me. I started out working in fashion and I started modeling. Started to just drop out of college and go about life on my own, figuring out what it is I want to do with my life. And so I started modeling in Chicago and started getting really popular. Then I also still dedicated my life to writing because it's something that's just a natural talent for me. It's a gift. And I fell into cahoots with some people who were working with a few musical artists. And so I started doing press releases for albums and album reviews and interviews of different like musical artists and celebrities who would come into Chicago. So my popularity kind of built around the city. But then stuff started to shift in my career. And I said, all right, it's time to do something different. My dad kind of like approached me one day. He like cornered me one morning in the kitchen. He's like, hey, you know what? I'm proud of you. I really I'm happy that your modeling career is going well, but I really think you should focus on your writing more because it's a natural gift and you should be using it. And I don't care what you write about, but you need to be writing about something. So I started a blog in 2011 after doing much research about what I could write about that I wouldn't get tired of, and I had a lot of information about, and that would actually provide substance to the world. And I said, oh, sex. I didn't see anyone at the time that was Black, young, vibrant, sexy, that was teaching about sex in a way that was informative and entertaining and also just relatable. And so instead of me complaining about the void in the market, I said, well, I'll be that solution. And so now, going on 6 years later, I have an international brand and my work consistently goes viral. And I've found a way to incorporate pretty much everything that I love: music, fashion, modeling, my sexiness, and sex, all into like one brand where now I work for myself and I wake up every single last day doing exactly what I love.
That definitely shows in your work. One of the reasons I like your blog and your videos and YouTube videos and things so much is because you really do put a focus on pleasure first is the focus. I mean, you definitely do disclaimers. You talk about, knowing status and things like that. But unlike a lot of fear-based sex education that's out there, you really seem to start from the, hey, this is supposed to be fun side of things. Have you always had well, this is going to sound kind of weird. Have you always had a natural aptitude for sex, or did this come out of you going, I need to know more about sex because I need my partners and me to know better how to pleasure each other?
It was always a natural curiosity. I mean, I am born under the sun sign Scorpio. And for those that are into astrology, you know that Scorpio is the ruler of sexuality and sex organs. So I've always had this just this innate awareness, and I've always had a draw toward sexuality. And so I started studying sexuality as a teenager, very early on. As a matter of fact, in 5th grade, our middle school took us to this center called the Robert Crown Center here in Illinois, and it teaches you all about reproductive health. And at that point, that's when I started to, become curious about sexuality, because I just started developing very early as a child. Like at 8 years old, I started growing boobs. So,
oh, wow,
very early. Mm-hmm. And by 9 years old, I was as tall as my mother and wearing a size 9 shoe and having to dress in a way to conceal my body, because even though I was 9, I was looking like I was 17. So I've had to really pay extra attention to my body, and my mother has always been very empowering in that way, where she's always told my sister and myself that we are the ones that are in control of our bodies and no one else. And so as I started to get older, I moved into wanting to study medicine. And so there were always all these dope documentaries that would come on the Discovery Channel about sexuality. And it would talk about sex, not from the pleasure aspect, but more so from the biological and anatomical aspects. I would ask my mom, hey, Mom, so there's this thing on TV. This is what it's about. It's not about pleasure. It's about the medical and health side of things. Can I watch it? And she would say, yeah. And so I would sit and just learn about all these chemical reactions in the brain. And so early on, I was very aware that, sex starts in the brain, right? Because that's where all the chemical reactions begin. And so early on, I had an awareness of sex from the biological and anatomical standpoint, but didn't have really an understanding of the pleasure aspect because I grew up in a church, It was always preached, save it till you're married. My mom was like, I know that's what we're being taught, but I'm gonna be realistic here. She's like, I'm not gonna tell you save it to marriage, even though that would be nice. But when it's time, use condoms, and then we'll get you on some birth control. That was her thing. And so it wasn't until I started having sex in college where I started to study the pleasure aspect, picking up the Kama Sutra and the sex position books. And I will say this. My first time watching porn was like soft porn on Cinemax when I was like 8 years old. So I had an awareness that like sex wasn't just mechanical, that it could be, pleasurable too. But I really didn't start adopting that until I started having sex. So I've been studying sexuality since, for a very long time in different ways that were, I guess, kind of age appropriate. And it just developed into this thing where I just felt like it's really natural to me. I feel comfortable talking about the subject, and people always come to me for advice. Like that.
I was just going to ask that. Like, as a kid, were you the person that everybody come to and ask you about stuff?
Oh, heck yeah. For everything, though, because like I'm a brainiac. So in school, I was always one of the top students. So people would always come to me for like study guides or answers on tests and things like that, or they would want to work with me. And then I have the gift of gab. And so I'm a really good negotiator. So I would always negotiate with like my teachers and peers. I was actually a peer mediator in school. And so people would always like, for some reason, I was like a matchmaker too. People would always come to me and be like, yo, can you hook me up with so-and-so? Or, yo, so I'm just wondering, like, how does she feel about me? Or what does he think about me? And so I would be like this in-between person. And I started calling myself the note collector because people would always pass me notes. And then I started calling myself the love guru because literally everyone would ask me advice about their relationships. And I would always give it to them and it would help them out, but I could never like apply it to my own life.
Sounds like Hello Dolly.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow. So what was the first, what would you consider to be your first class or teaching about sex? What were you teaching and where?
I would say my blog site,
Okay.
As far as formally, because I've always been that go-to person amongst my friends and peers. So when I started my blog, I literally started my blog Labor Day 2011, and I wrote my first articles out in a journal while sitting in Hartsfield Airport in Atlanta. And then when I put the first blog post up, it just like took off, and people who knew me just as this model, they knew me as like this quiet person because that's just kind of how I am in like social settings before I like warm up. And so they were confused. They were like, wait, where is this coming from? And I'm like, well, I am human and I do have sex, and I actually have a lot of sex, but you just don't know about it because my business isn't in the streets. So my first lessons were really just on the blog, and I really didn't start actually physically teaching classes until last year I can't say that. I started doing seminars at the Exotica Expo in 2012. And I've been teaching with them ever since. So they actually gave me my first opportunity to teach classes on a pretty large scale because Exotica attracts anywhere from 15,000 to 20,000 attendees every show. And they do 3 shows every year in 3 different cities, one of them being Chicago, which is my hometown. And so those were some of my first like lessons in person, and people really enjoyed my teaching style. And then, of course, the blog and YouTube. But then I started touring last year, and my classes have been primarily female focused. Because, a lot of the men who follow me, they have come to know about me probably because of my photos. And so some of them have the wrong idea about who I am and what I do. And so I have been very cautious about opening up my workshops and things like that in person to men when it is outside of like the Exotica setting, simply because, it's a safety factor. And,
that's interesting that one of the, and maybe you have some ideas about how to solve this problem. My partner Naya and I both teach sex education classes, and we've been pretty successful in teaching classes about blowjobs, and even about anal sex when it's a women in the class, and learning about how to pleasure men or how to have good anal sex themselves. But we keep on pitching, and we always get asked, why don't you do a cunnilingus class? And we'd love to. We have a class outline all set and stuff like that. But the problem is every time that, at least for our local sex shop, A Woman's Touch, every time they offer a class for men on cunnilingus, nobody comes. It's like there's this fear that men have of going to a class to learn how to do that. Have you seen that kind of attitude?
I have. I think it's embarrassing for them. What's funny, though, is that, I do have a video on YouTube just giving some basics, and it's doing pretty well. And I get men all the time that ask me questions about how to do it better. And so I think, first of all, it's an ego thing with men. They don't want to admit that they need help with this, even though they know that they do. And then they don't want to sit in a class with a bunch of other dudes learning how to, use their mouth. I think, if anything, a class online would be better for them. But I even offered an oral sex 101 class, which wasn't just about fellatio, it was also about cunnilingus. And it was primarily women in the class. And so with men, I just, as much as they reach out to me and say, oh, you should teach a class on this or that, they aren't the ones that are investing in their sex education. If anything, they're the ones that want to get it for free. And, I definitely have seen that. And that's why I really don't invest my time in even promoting or putting together classes specifically for men, especially in person, because it would be a wasted investment, because I just do not, I have not seen a pattern of them really making that time to invest in their sex education, unless it involves me getting naked. If it involves me getting naked or me showing physical examples of something, then they're all for it. But because that's the one thing I get asked to is, well, are you actually going to be performing cunnilingus? And I'm like, this isn't porn. If you want to see a woman lick pussy, you can easily go to pornhub.com or XNXX or RedTube or wherever online, Perv whatever, and see a woman lick pussy. But if you really want me to teach you, then know that I'm not going to be using another woman as a demo. I'm going to be using a toy or a piece of fruit.
Well, and plus the kind of cunnilingus for the male gaze, where they do that. That's usually not the way that real, that effective cunnilingus is. The best example of cunnilingus I've seen is on Crash Pad series, and that's two lesbians going at it, and you can't see what techniques they're doing because their face is buried in their partner's crotch.
Exactly.
And it's you need to have that. It's really sad to me that think that, they won't invest money in what to do, but they will invest thousands of dollars in trying to find little scams or games to pick women up. The pickup artist thing is millions of dollars.
That is so trash to me. And pickup artists aren't even teaching you how to be in loving relationships with women. They're just teaching you how to smash and pass, which is, if that's what you're all about, that's fine. I'm not judging you. But how healthy is that for your psyche, and how healthy is that for the women that you're involving yourself with? You know what I mean? And that is an interesting dichotomy. And I'm like, so you admit that you don't know how to pick up chicks, and so you'll pay some dude who's just really a douchebag to teach you how to pick up chicks, but you don't want to invest a little bit of money into learning how to pleasure that woman when you actually get her into your presence. It makes absolutely no sense to me. And so, even though I get all of these men who are saying, do more stuff for us, it's like, well, if you guys actually invest in your sex education, I will. So I'm just working on different ways to reach them because, there is a demand. But the question is exactly how do you feel, in what form will you be able to consume this information in a healthy where it's still profitable for me, because this is my livelihood.
Maybe we need to come up with another numbering system. I stuck my tongue out at a 3, but I was only able to lick her at an 8, and just whatever. Maybe they'd respond to that.
Right. You know what? It's just, It is really trial and error with that. Women, they understand, like, I need to know this because for them, their partners are very adamant about expressing that it's unacceptable for them not to know how to do X, Y, and Z. But women, we do not speak up enough to let men know that they are not doing what they need to do to put it down in the bedroom. Women fake orgasms and do all of these things and lie to men to protect their egos, but then your pleasure is suffering as a result. Personally, I'm not the person that is going to stroke your ego and tell you you did a good job when you didn't. I'm the person that, first of all, gives out report cards, and then I also give out critiques.
Wait. Report, like an actual report card?
I give them verbal report cards.
Oh, okay. I was picturing, that would be great. I thought,
I think it would be a blow to ego if I give out an actual report card because it's like the grade is there in pen and, in ink. So, but I give a verbal report card and I'll say, all right, after we've come back down in resolution and our bodies are back to their normal resting state. I'm like, all right, so recap. This is what it is. This is your grade and this is what you could have done better. And then I also turn it around and say, so what did you think about, what I did, and is there anything that I can improve on? Because I don't make it just like a session where I'm bashing him if he didn't do something right. Like, I also want to know, how can I improve upon my pleasure delivery if there was something that, he did not experience, or she, because I'm into women as well. If there is something that he or she thought I could have done better. So I think that more women need to speak up so that way men know that, yes, it is important for you to invest in your sex education because you're missing the mark. There are so many men missing the mark. And what's funny is, like, when I talk about female orgasm and I mention that the average woman is not having orgasms regularly and many women have never had an orgasm, I always say to men, if you think that every single last woman that you had sex with had an orgasm during sex with you, they lied to you. They lied to you. Because there are guys who's like, I hit it out of the park every time. And I'm like, you were lied to, because there's no possible way. If the average woman is not, like, over 70% of women are not having orgasms when they have sex, then chances are there are at least, well, if you've had sex with 5 women, there are at least like 2 or 3 out of those women that just didn't feel a thing. Mm-hmm. So I just think that there needs to be more responsibility taken on behalf of women to let men know, like, you need to do something about this. You need to invest in your sex education and stop giving them passes because you're so afraid to bruise their egos. Because men have no problem saying, oh, she has weak ass pussy, or oh, her pussy stinks, or oh, she can't ride worth shit, or she can't suck a dick worth shit. Like, they don't mind saying that stuff, being vocal about it and making memes about it. But women, we cower in fear for whatever reason. And I'm like, no, you need to empower yourself, sis, and let them know it needs to step up.
Yeah, that ego bruising, that's the hardest part. One of the nicest things that I ever had happen was someone after our encounter, they actually wrote me an erotica piece about the experience, and mm-hmm. And it was a good way to get the critique, because the stuff that she focused on for the sexy story is obviously the stuff she likes. And the stuff that wasn't really in there is the stuff that I didn't necessarily, that didn't really have a good effect. So I think that, that whole idea of how to give the critique without bruising the ego, that's a fine art indeed.
It is. And you know what? It's funny because people have been like, Tyomi, you need to write a book, which I have several books in my mind. It's just a matter of me sitting down and, writing out the manuscripts. And that's one of the things that I do want to work on, is like a manual for lovers, because there are a lot of self-help books out there, but not enough workbooks, in my opinion. And when a couple gets together, especially if they're planning on being together for the long term, you really need to sit down and like create a sexual map of your bodies, create a sexual map to each of your pleasure. You need to know both of your likes and dislikes, because it will change as time goes on. And I think that couples really need to focus on making that happen. And then a huge part of that is sexual communication, because what I get often are a lot of people who will write me just seeking validation for the things that they like, and they're like, well, I'm afraid to tell my partner, or I don't know how to talk to my partner about this, or how do I say this without being hurtful? Like, that is a very common question that I get. And so I think that one of the things I will be working on, as far as Glamouratica's branded sex education in print, will be a workbook that, couples can use to kind of just paint a picture of what their sexuality looks like together, and use that book whenever they need to, because as you grow older, as you have more life experiences, as children come in and, life just changes, your sexuality changes as well. And these are things that need to be worked through. Like, if you're not working on it, it's just getting old and stale. And it's funny because people will wait until their relationship is almost in shambles before they even reach out for help. And I'm like, there's no reason for that, when literally sex educators are online every day giving you advice for free, and then also offering their services for a nominal fee. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I think workbooks are definitely the way, and sexual communication is something that needs more focus.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. It reminds me of a polyamory podcaster named Cunning Minx has talked about how she will hand, or I don't know if she's actually physically handed it to them, but she's given people what she calls her user manual, mm-hmm. and it's only focused on what she likes. It's all about her. I love the idea of, as a couple, going through and creating a couple's, a relationship user manual. That would be a really, seems to me to be a good way to strengthen things, because everybody's different. Everybody's
different. And we, as educators, we have to remember that, okay, yes, we have our book knowledge, but we also have our own personal knowledge from experience, which we need both in order to be an effective educator. But when you're teaching to the masses, you have to remember to be objective and not be subjective, and come from a space of, well, this is what I like. And I'll say that often when I'm talking or broadcasting. I'll say, in my personal experience, this is what I've experienced, or this is what I like, but everyone's different. And so you may not have that same experience. And I always like to put a disclaimer out there that, we don't judge how anyone decides to express their sexuality. My platforms are spaces for people to express themselves openly in a healthy way without judgment. And so, I'm always cognizant of that when I am teaching, to take myself out of it and not make it about me, but to put the information out there where people can absorb it and apply it according to however they express themselves sexually.
Nice. So you mentioned when you were originally starting this out, you were trying to fill, a niche, that niche. I always pronounce that wrong. You're trying to fill a niche that,
Pronounce it right.
Has it gotten better in the 6 years since then? What do you see as the real need right now for more sex educators?
So I will say this: there is definitely a need for more educators of color, especially men of color, because I don't see that often. I see a lot of men of color who speak in the esoteric space and of metaphysics and consciousness or whatever. But as far as sex education from the Black male perspective, I really don't see that, and we need more of that. I have seen an increase in the numbers of Black women that are coming out now and, speaking more freely about sex education. And I like to think that I have had an influence in that, because a lot of these women do follow me and they do reach out to me and they say, ever since I started watching you, I've become more confident about moving into this space or whatever, which is great. But the issue is that in mainstream sexuality, because there really is such a thing, for those that get placed on mainstream platforms, we still do not see that person of color being represented and knowledge.
The Masters of Sex book was a great example of that. Oh, God.
I would tell you, though, when that book came out and everyone was livid, that's when I knew I arrived, because my name got thrown in the bunch of people of color, educators of color have been included in that book. And I was like, oh shit, these industry heads, like leaders in this industry, are throwing my name in the hat, which means I'm doing something right. And yeah, that was a shit show.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. You were also when I was talking with someone about it, they said, well, they're just so hard to find. And I named off 5 people off the top of my head. I said, and you were, I think, second on the list. And the first one was Melina Williams.
yes,
You know, I'm like, it is not that hard to find educators of color.
it really isn't. They're just not looking in the right places. And it's like, okay, as a Black woman, like, not only do I have to be aware of my own, you know, sisters and brothers in this thing, but I also have to be aware of everyone else. And so it's interesting that, you know, I have to have a broad perspective and know everything and kind of like move in and out of these crowds, but then that's not required for people of non-color. And I don't think that's fair, because it pretty much limits their scope. And so for me, like, yeah, I educate for anybody and everybody, but my focus is people of color, because we need it, and we don't have education. Well, I mean, there are educators out there, but for the longest time, there wasn't education, sex education, that was like tailored to us and how we express ourselves. And so a lot of the things that I do include, you know, a partner of color, you know, a Black man, because rarely do we see people of color being depicted in ways that are loving and beautiful and romantic. Like, even when you go on Google and you put in romantic relationship, it's a white couple that comes up. I would have to put in Black romantic couple in order to even find that.
Right.
And it kind of irritates me that we have to be marginalized like that. And so a lot of my work going forward, you know, I like most of my books, when I do have examples pictured of like positions and stuff, it will be myself and my Black man in positions, because we need to see ourselves in that way. Because, you know, the Black person, it can go really deep, and I don't want to go too deep in the conversation about just like how our sexuality has been targeted and just attacked for centuries.
That's a book and a podcast series of its own. That's absolutely.
Yeah. Just, I don't want to get into that energy today, because today is a great day. It's beautiful outside.
Yeah. I will say one of the things that we're really excited about for Ropecraft is, I mean, we early on created what we call the Kingsters of Color Safe Space, just a meetup, a space set aside for that. And this particular conference, a guy named David Wraith, I don't know if you're familiar with him, from St. Louis. And he's a fantastic kink and sexuality educator. He's going to be hosting that this time around, and it's really interesting. The best thing that I can do, you know, as a cis white male, in that is to basically I field the questions of the person who goes, well, why do they need their own space, and why do they need to, you know, why do they get special treatment? And I just try and, you know, block those. And other than that, just trying to get out of the way.
You know what? It irritates me when any white person or a person that's not a person of color wants to complain about not being included in a subsect. Like, you're the majority. Why the fuck do you care? You already have your outlets, your educators. You have everything you need. Let us have what we have, and honor that and respect that, and just keep it moving. Like, why do you have to be included into what we're doing? You can't even relate. Like, it just irritates me when I see that. And I'm just like,
yeah. Like I said, that's a whole other subject that definitely is worth exploring. But in the interest of the podcast and how much time we have left and stuff, I'd like to ask you a different question, which also might be an irritating question, because I know a lot of people would think of it as irritating. You have the distinction of being the only sex educator I know who celebrates a personal discipline of celibacy. And first of all, what does that word exactly mean for you? Does that mean like no orgasms at all, or does it just mean no partners, or how do you define that?
Well, I will say this. There are many sex educators that have gone through the journey with celibacy. They may not be practicing it right now, but at some point, pretty much and practically every sex educator that I know has gone through it. And even porn stars that I know have gone through periods of celibacy. And Celibacy for me is a personal journey back to self. And for me, it means no penetration, no sexual intercourse, because I still play, because you have to use your sexual energy somehow, because you don't want to get into that space where you're repressing that energy, because then that's not healthy. So during this time, I've really been playing with and exploring my kinks, which has been so life-changing and transformative for me, because I feel like, I know I've always been kinky, but in the past I've, been around people who don't understand fetishes and kinks and were so afraid of it that, they projected their fears onto me, and it made me feel afraid of accepting and embracing what I already knew what was inside of me. But in practicing celibacy, I was like, well, this is my time to explore this, because I still have to do something with this sexual energy besides using it as creative energy. I still want to be able to express this energy in a sexual way. So shouts out to Jet Setting Jasmine and King Noir. They're my kink coaches, and I've been coaching with them. Well, I've been in coaching with them for almost a year and a half now, and it has been such an amazing experience. And the people that I've met, the experiences that I've had have been quite amazing. But celibacy in itself has been amazing because it's shown me myself, and it's shown me the error in my ways, because I hit an emotional rock bottom where I just kept attracting broken relationship after broken relationship, to the point where it ended up in a pregnancy that I didn't want. And I said, okay, even before I found out I was pregnant, I had already started practicing celibacy. But after I found out I was pregnant, I was like, definitely not. Definitely going to stick to this commitment, because, this was the right thing, but wrong timing. And so for me, this process has been challenging, not because I can't say no to sex, because that's the easy part. The challenging part has been the reflections of myself that I've gotten through doing the self-work and the spiritual work, and those reflections were very ugly, to the point where I realized that I had moved into a sunken place, a dark place in my life, where I had gotten so far away from who I truly am and who I am within consciousness. And so it has been such a beautiful experience, waking back up to the concept of love and just who I truly am, and moving back into communion with the Creator. Because, man, just the way I used to live my life, and just constant worry and yo-yoing back and forth, it wasn't healthy for me. And so now, my perspective on life and in life, my faith is strong. Nothing can move or shake that for me. And I live by faith, and I am so in tune with my intuition and with the divine, that I literally just take leaps of faith, and I take chances, and I don't even worry about the outcome, because I know the outcome is going to be great. So for me, celibacy has been such a great experience, and I'm still practicing it because I like how I feel. And I recognize and realize I don't need to give myself to anyone sexually to be accepted, because at one point that's what I was doing. At one point, I was using sex as a way to cope with hurt and pain. I was using sex as a way to be accepted and to feel like I had a purpose in someone's life. I was using sex as a way to connect in times when I didn't feel like I had anything else to connect with. And that was not a healthy expression of my sexuality. I'm appreciative of the experiences that I've had, and I don't regret them, and I will never go back and change anything if I had to do it again. But at this point in my life, now that I am fully aware of my consciousness, I'm like, you know what? I should be using my sex in a different way. And so I'm just waiting on that moment when, this beautiful person comes into my life that I can fully express myself with. Because I got to be honest, yeah, I had a lot of sex, but I can say that I've only performed at maybe 35 to 40% of my sexual capacity. And it doesn't feel good when you can't completely let yourself go, because you really don't trust that person deep down inside. And I don't want that for my life anymore. I want to be able to express myself 100% fully and let go and have like super explosive orgasms back to back to back to back. So at the end of this celibacy, that will happen. And I'm just, in the meantime, I'm just enjoying the experience and what I'm getting from it spiritually and physically and emotionally.
I feel like if the abstinence only type people could just reframe their suggestions in that kind of way, they would probably have a lot more success in making that kind of thing feel appealing. I really admire the way you've identified that sexuality, the way you were doing sexuality was distracting you from things you had to work on yourself.
Yep.
And then refocusing that whole idea. I mean, you can use anything to distract yourself from your personal work. I tend to use overwork to do that, and things like that. So that's a neat idea. I hope you do a book about that particular concept. Yeah,
I am. I think I'm going to call it like taking your sex back or something like that, because
celibacy 101 would not sell. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because you know what? See, there is a difference between abstinence and celibacy. Abstinence is just not having sex. But when you're celibate, you're not having sex for a purpose. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I was just saying I'm not going to have sex, that would be dumb. I would still be fucking right now. You know what I mean? But there was a deeper purpose for why I was doing what I was doing. Like, I am into astrology and the metaphysical. And so I do tarot readings and I use like different decks. And the decks that I use are like angel decks. So I did a reading on myself before I went celibate, and this card kept coming up, and the angels kept telling me that I was emotionally unavailable. And my ego automatically felt attacked, and I'm like, fuck do you mean I'm emotionally unavailable? What does that mean? But one day when I was just feeling very low, I decided to Google it. And when I Googled it and I started researching, I was like, shit, this really does describe where I am right now. And at that point, I realized, like, you have to do something. And it's a problem when your mom is like, maybe you should practice celibacy. Like, when your mom, even when, like, one of your lovers, after having sex, says, I think you should practice celibacy. Like,
oh yeah, that'd be a wake up call. Yeah.
That's when it's a problem and you need to do it. And I was running from it for a long time. So it was inevitable for me. But I think that we do need to reframe the process because, and there are a lot of great books out there on celibacy. Shouts out to Megan Good and Devon Franklin for their book, The Wait. Their book really focuses on practicing celibacy to find your perfect match in life. But that's not why I'm practicing celibacy, and that's not why I, went into it. And so I feel like there needs to be multiple books written on the subject from different perspectives because everyone's reasoning behind why they practice celibacy is different. Most of the people that I've connected with that have practiced celibacy in the past or are currently practicing celibacy, they're doing it for the same reason I am, for that spiritual growth and elevation, because they realize, like, they've reached a point in their life where sex was doing more harm than good. And so, but I feel like throughout this process, you do get to reframe what you use your sex for and how you use your sex. And that's why I say, like, I would probably name it like taking your sex back or reclaiming your sex life or whatever, because it really is a reset. It is a reset of how you think about sex and how you view yourself sexually and how you view others sexually. Because, like, I gotta be honest with you. Before this process, I was objectifying men heavily. And so for me, men were nothing more than just playthings. And then there were those guys that, like, if I did not view them sexually, they were more to me than just, a sex object. But for those that I was highly interested in sexually, I saw them as nothing more than just a sex toy. And I was like, man, that's kind of fucked up. But then the fucked up part about it was that then in turn, that would cause me to attract men that just were not feeding into my spirit. They were feeding into my ego, which is never a good thing. And so when I took celibacy off the table, when I would go out and flirt, when I put celibacy on the table and took sex out of the equation, when I would go out and interact with men and, get their numbers and stuff, and we would chit chat, it was interesting to see, like, to hear the dead silence or to see like how the interactions were now different, because their main focus was, well, I want to get to know her just enough so we can smash. But my focus was, well, I actually want to get to know this guy. And then I discovered, like, oh, yeah, he may be good looking and I may feel some sexual pull towards him, but his personality sucks. And so therefore, we don't need to even finish out this conversation because sex isn't even an option. So now I'm a better judge of people, and I'm a better judge of who I even allow in my personal space, which in the past I wasn't. And so I was just collecting all of these energies that were really just dampening to my spirit. And literally those energies being collected were also putting like physical weight on me, to the point where like 2016, I was the heaviest I had ever been in my life. I was 230 pounds, and I felt all of it in my knees and my back. And it wasn't until I started like practicing celibacy and cord cutting and getting rid of these energies and really reconciling things with old lovers that the weight started to fall off. And so now here in 2017, everyone's looking at me like, you're so slim. And I'm like, this is actually my healthy weight. It's my healthy weight. So embrace it and accept it and love it, because I do. So it can get really deep, and people don't look at it that way. They're just so focused on, oh my God, you're not having sex. How are you surviving? It's like, I'm actually surviving quite well, and I'm manifesting things extremely quick into my reality because I am using my sexual energy to do that. And I'm healthy and I'm happy, and you know, like that, like, hey, better than anything sex could ever have given me from the past.
Right. And I love that, you know, it's not about waiting for, you know, some ceremony or church or some, you know, outside force to say it's okay. It's until you're ready for it. Exactly. And that's the right time to wait.
It's your own personal walk and journey. And that's what people need to understand. And your celibacy is whatever you define it as. Like, I'm not going to sit up here and deny myself orgasms. Like, I have orgasms in my sleep. I can have orgasms by sitting and meditating and, you know, practicing Kegels. I have orgasms sometimes by doing lower body exercises. So, you know, I'm not going to deny myself an orgasm, and I'm definitely not going to deny myself a play session of being spanked or waxed. You know what I mean? So what people allow within their journey in celibacy is all subjective. Like, some people may feel that kissing is too much for them because it'll send them over the edge. So they'll say, I'm not going to kiss or even, you know, be around men or women in like intimate settings. So it all depends on that person and what they feel they can handle. Me, I have a lot of willpower, and I'm very strong in that way, where if I dedicate myself to something, that's just what it is. So,
would it be fair to say that if you want to try this kind of a path, what you need to do is first identify what it is that is distracting you from the hard work and just take out that thing?
Yep, and you have to also identify that there is a purpose for why you're saying, I'm going to abstain for a moment in time. And you have to realize that it is a moment in time. If you do not have a purpose for why you're doing it, if you are not being divinely guided, then don't do it, because it's really self-inflicted. Like, you're the one that's saying yes or no. No one else is forcing you into the journey. It's all dependent upon you. So, you know, if you are a person that feels like you're at that point in life where nothing is changing, and you feel within your spirit that you need to take a break from sex, then you need to do it. But also examine exactly, why are you being called to do it? Why is your intuition pushing you into that direction? And be honest with yourself.
That's hard.
It is hard, because we don't want to take responsibility for the bullshit that we've allowed and attracted into our lives. Every single last thing that has happened to us in life is a direct result of us, of our actions. We are the creators of our reality. So, but we would rather deflect, and that's just our ego doing that. We would rather deflect and say, it's this person's fault because they hurt me, and it's this person's fault because they didn't listen to me. And it's like, no, You chose to stay in that situation and you attracted that person in the first place. So if you attracted that person who is a mirror of you, then what does that say about you in this point in time? The fact that I was in these broken relationships showed me that I was broken. And whoever wants to admit that they're a broken case, no one does. But I had to admit that in order to jumpstart my healing. And it was the best thing I could have ever done for my life because I am the happiest I've ever been in.
Excellent. That's a good, that is definitely a good recommendation for that practice. It's an interesting thing. If I wanted to make Naya suddenly look at me with horror, I'd say we should practice celibacy and not yet. Oh boy, she's staring at me right now like you would not believe. So just to close out the podcast, I'd like to ask you what I call my lightning questions, and they're just some easy ones, and just, answer with whatever comes to your mind first.
Okay.
Sure. And it's really, it's going to sound like, you're filling out a dating profile. What's your favorite food?
Oh my gosh. I just want to say Asian, like blanket, Asian food.
Gotcha. And your beverage of choice?
Wine?
Wine?
Wine or alkaline water.
Gotcha. What kind of wine, just out of curiosity?
I would say either a Shiraz or a Malbec or maybe a sweet red.
Gotcha. Cool.
Or rosé, yeah.
And if what's a good movie you'd recommend some people see?
Everyone should see Coming to America just because it's freaking hilarious and Eddie Murphy is the GOAT.
All right, yeah, classic. Yeah. And if you were going to be going on a long trip and you could only bring one book with you, what would you bring?
Oh, okay. This one's kind of hard. Shit. Damn, like you got me stumped, man, because I have so many books and I love them all, and it's hard to choose just one.
And I won't let you just say I'll bring my Kindle because that's cheating. Yeah.
That's cheap. Oh, damn. Okay.
All right, let me rephrase it then. If I said to you, "Hey, I'm looking for a good book to read," what would you recommend?
You know what? I'm just going to go back to the original question and just say The Power of Now, because
Eckhart.
If I'm on an island by myself, I have to really be present and like just rooted in the now, because to think about, oh my God, I got to get off this island, like that means that I'm not being present and I'm not conscious. So The Power of Now would be a book I would take with me because it would help me to remain in the present moment and just enjoy where I am, because I'm clearly there for a purpose. So yeah, I'll definitely take that book.
Got it. Cool. All right, so now we're going to get into a little more juicy stuff. When you are going to go off for having one of your kinky sessions with your friends and stuff like that, what's something that's in your toy bag that people might be surprised to see?
Rope, because I do like bondage, and then like also candles, like for waxing. Like ever since I got turned on to that, I'm just been like, yeah, I would do this every day if I could, honestly.
Do you use a special kind of candle, or?
I don't typically. I just like whatever Jasmine and King has, and I trust them. They use the wax that is really safe for skin or whatever. I just embrace and accept that. So I actually got to get some of my own candles.
I might try and see if I can get you some of the Twisted Monk's wax play candles. He started out making bondage rope, but he's branched out into a few different other things. And Naya and I love the candle wax that he produces for that kind of play. So, might like to see if we
can get a little goodie bag for me when I see you at the event.
There we go. Yeah, we could probably arrange for that. And here's the weird question. Let's pretend I have a magic wand. And that's not a euphemism. Pretend I have a magic wand and I can wave it, and anyone, past or present, living, dead, fictional, real, anyone at all, can appear in perfect health and they want to play with you. Who would you like to have manifest? And if the bonus question is, what would you like to do with them?
Marvin Gaye, and
Oh, wow. That is a great answer.
yeah. Oh my God! Like, first of all,
Oh, fuck.
I just want to be completely seduced by Marvin Gaye,
Who
and like,
doesn't? Yeah.
I hear stories about him all the time, especially from my friends in Europe. Like, it's just crazy how like closely connected I am to Marvin Gaye, and like. I like one of the stories that makes me really happy is about him living out of a Volkswagen like van on a beach in Hawaii with like one of his lovers, and I was like, what the fuck? I would have loved that. Like that my inner hippie and just flower child is just I just would love to be completely seduced by Marvin Gaye. Like first just have him sing to me and just rub my scalp and then just let it all lead from there. Like I always say, if I had a time machine, I just want to go back to that day, just have like a play session with Marvin Gaye, and that play session would probably turn into like a full-on relationship, because I'm the kind of person where, you know, my personality is addictive, and you know, my energy is infectious, and so I'm pretty sure he would have such a great time with me that it would just turn into like a rendezvous for quite some time. So yeah, Marvin Gaye all day.
All right. That is a beautiful answer. And last question, what is your favorite dirty word?
Fuck. It's simple.
Yeah, good old fashioned fuck. All right. Cool. So your website is it Glamouratica 101? Is that at the website?
Yeah, that's my blog site where you can go and read quite a few articles on sex advice. I'm updating weekly. I'm getting back into writing on my own platform because I have been writing for so many other people over the last like 3 years. So Glamouratica101.com for sex advice. My website to learn about me, where I will be, and all that good stuff is sexperttyomi.com.
Ah, yes, Sexpert Tyomi.
Then you got to check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/glamerotica101. And you can find all my social media online. Like if you just put Glamazon Tyomi or Tyomi in Google, I swear you can find all of this stuff and probably some other things that are on sites that probably I did not condone for them to be on.
Yeah.
You know how it is.
Yep. Well, I will also put links to all of these things in the show notes. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you at Ropecraft at the on the Monday. The Monday is a special day. It's got lots of special events happening, and I look forward to meeting you in person then.
I can't wait. I'm super excited. Hopefully I can get roped up. That would be awesome.
I guarantee you won't have trouble finding someone to do that, and I will be first in line doing my Katniss imitations, saying I volunteer as tribute. So,
well, I'm giving you first dibs.
All right, yeah, everybody heard that. I hope everyone heard that in podcast land who will be at the event. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot for talking to me.
Thanks for having me, man. This was such a great experience, and I'm glad we finally got to do it.
So I want to thank Goddess Tyomi. That's her Twitter feed, and I always call her Goddess Tyomi. I want to thank her for taking the time to spend the time here on the podcast with me. I really got a lot out of talking with her, and look forward to doing it again, hopefully on Monday at Ropecraft. Remember, you want to come to Ropecraft? There's lots of different ways you can do that, and you get a discount if you use the code GrayDancerGuest. All one word, all lowercase. That will give you our cheapest ticket price instead of having to pay the full upgraded price that you get for buying it late. That's right, because you listen to the podcast, you get in for free. Not for free. You get in for $50 less than everybody else. So how about that? And I would love to hear from you. You can give me comments at graydancer@gmail.com. I'm also graydancer on Twitter, graydancer on FetLife, facebook.com/graydancer. You can find me all over the place. I'd love to hear your comments, questions for Tyomi, suggestions for further podcasts, and anything else you want to talk about, because when it comes to kink, sex, and culture, it's not always black and white. So you might as well just dance in the gray.